The second episode of Lost in Lockdown. Hope everybody's okay. For those on with me now, and also for those listening. So the format going forward will be 2 episodes a week. We've decided because pilot part 1 and 2 felt it's only necessary to keep going with the duos. Gets through it quicker as well, but also I feel that they often work better if you talk about 2 at a time. I think a lot of the plot lines follow on quite neatly into one another, so it's just a better way to go through the show. So yeah, kicking it off. First off, I'll hand over to Scott with a few stats. Statman Scott.
So episode 3 of Lost is Tabula Rasa, which is Latin for, is it clean slate or something like that? I don't know. I might be wrong.
I think it's blank
or
slate.
Blank slate, yeah, something like that. It was directed by Jack Bender, who was a pretty prolific director on Lost. I think he did at least like a dozen, maybe more episodes, and written by our mate Damon Lindelof.
Hey.
So it aired on the 6th of October 2004. So cast your mind back, what was you doing that day? You was probably in school, weren't you, Tom?
I was 12.
Oh God, yeah.
I didn't want to bring my age into this because I didn't want to make anyone feel bad, but yes, I was 12.
I mean, you must have had to rewatch this several times through your teenage years to kind of fully appreciate it. Because at 12,
yeah, well, I mean, I could go on forever, but in a nutshell, when I first watched it, it was just like a kooky, weird island where everyone had a dirty little secret, and it was a bit drama-ish. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And I mean, at the time, I was watching stuff like the OC, so it just kind of felt like a logical step up, almost.
Yeah. So and viewership. This is quite interesting because the viewership was 16.5 million people, which was approximately 500,000 down from the previous episode, which was pilot part 2. So it's quite interesting that a lot of people dropped off the following week.
I think that's how it often is sometimes, with pilots. They always obviously get a big initial rating, and then it's often how it's not a case of maintaining it in the first season. It's how quickly can you stop the decline.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be like peaks and troughs in, especially with like the first season. But I've not read every single viewership figure yet. I've not got that sad, but the following episode was up. But yeah, I'll speak about it later on. But it was actually the 9th highest rating show in the 9th highest rated show of the week. So that's quite low down in terms of ratings. I didn't find out what was top because internet didn't want to show me for some reason.
I'm gonna have a look.
Yeah, I did a lot of digging around just to find some specific facts for the week, but it didn't yield much. But yeah, so as I say, Jack Bender directed quite a lot of significant episodes of Lost. From memory, from 20 minutes ago, I can't recall any of the ones, but he was certainly. I think he was kind of the in-house directors that they had.
I think he went on to do a lot of Game of Thrones as well. Actually,
he's definitely a name I'm familiar with, but yeah, it's probably
another. I don't know if it is Game of Thrones, but it feels like he's done other stuff. I'll just have a look now whilst I'm quickly. Oh, he's done.
Yeah, I'm having a look through. He's done. Yeah, probably about looking at this about 30 episodes of Lost.
Oh wow,
at least, and then a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones. Only the 2 of
Sopranos.
Game of Thrones,
Sopranos. He's done a couple of as well.
That's what I just remembered. Yeah, oh, wow.
Sopranos. So about 30 episodes of Lost, which means he did about he directed about a quarter of the show. 121 episodes in total.
So I think he was probably an executive producer as well towards the end of it. He probably was quite high up.
Yeah, it would have been definitely.
So yeah, that's my.
Well, that. Sorry, go on. Yeah,
I'll just say so. That's my quick stats for Tabula Rasa.
Smash it.
Those viewing figures are great. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that those viewing figures, what did you say, 16.6 or something like that?
16.5
Like
million.
that's 16.5. Like that sounds
Mm.
crazy.
It does.
Like I don't think there's any show now that would get that kind of numbers.
No, definitely not. And I mean, you got to think about it as well.
But I guess it's because.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Sorry, keep interrupting. But it's like I guess it's because it's like a network show. I guess again it keeps coming back to that. You know, those are the ones that people always tend to watch. Whereas something like, well, yeah, you mentioned Sopranos or even Game of Thrones. You know, because they're on HBO.
Yeah.
You know, there's less of a viewership, I guess, or maybe there was then, maybe not so much now. But I don't think even Game of Thrones maybe got like 16 million.
I think towards,
but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Towards the end, they would. I think the finale was about that much, but when it first began, it was like 2 million, if that.
Shit.
Yeah.
You see, that's what always made me laugh, because HBO were clearly raking it in, because if you think about it, obviously you've got to pay for a HBO subscription, and then all of a sudden you've got 16.5 million live viewers. And then, like you say, you got to translate that into whatever network stats are. I can't even think of anything that touches 10 million these days, let alone 16 million.
Well,
so
the pilot, the first part of the pilot was 18 million. So that was kissing 20 million, which is crazy.
It is. And also, one thing, this is just off my memory, which is a bit sad, but, you know, Firefly got cancelled at 9 million viewership. You know, those are the kind of figures you're playing around with. And that was, you know, Firefly was 03, so it's around this time. So to think back then that shows were getting cancelled with that higher viewership compared to today, where you had something like, I guess, Hannibal is the first thing that comes to mind, because I'll never, ever give up on that coming back. But, you know, that was getting to a point where, like, by the end of the first season, I think less than 2 million watched it. So
that's crazy.
It's mad.
Figures have just completely changed TV. Like it's such a fine line as well. Clearly.
Yeah, I think back when, especially when like Tabula Rasa aired, and probably Walkabout. In fact, the majority of the early seasons of Lost, you know, it would have been about the people watching it. But nowadays, I think it's more the advertising. It's what share of the, you know, the advertising's happening at that specific time.
Yeah,
that they go on. So if you put like an episode of Lost on now, it probably wouldn't. I don't know why, but it probably wouldn't hit the same way, because you got to remember as well, we weren't streaming then, were we?
Yeah. That's it. Not as many people tune into it on the when it airs. They'll wait and they'll play it back on demand or stream service later on. So.
I don't know if you remember, something's just come to mind actually. Did you, like, when it used to be on Channel 4, you used to watch that episode, but then immediately after on E4 they'd have the episode after? I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that, but I don't think I did that, because obviously I was still torrenting for at least the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that's right. I remember that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like Channel 4 used to do that with quite a few shows, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because I remember when the first season of Lost was on, like when it started on Channel 4, I think they showed it like 3 times a week. Like showed it on a Wednesday night, and then it was repeated on a Sunday, and then at some other point in the week. And I think I watched it every single time. So I watched that one episode of Lost 3 times in the same week.
One thing I kept remembering, especially in my current rewatch, I'm back end of season 1 now, but it's just amazing how much I must have watched this first season, because, you know, when you get the teasers at the start, you know, like the previously on Lost stuff, I can remember every single aspect of it, and then because I've remembered that, I'm like, I know which episode I'm on, which is just ridiculous. Because that just throws the whole nerd thing up in the air. I mean,
I'm like that with
but like
it's like when I see the cold open, I know exactly which episode it is, even though the cold open normally has no relevance to the actual episode itself. So
yep.
I
think in terms of comedy, I'm the same with like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah,
I've watched that over and over so many times, and as soon as something comes on, I'll be like, "Yep, know exactly when that is." Right, so shall we kick it off then? Tabula Rasa. So, 3rd episode, and I guess the first one really where we have significant start of the flashbacks,
First
and
one, that proper one.
it's the first proper one, and we are blessed with the character of Miss Kate Austen. So, what was everyone's thoughts about this episode?
I love Kate. I love Kate in this episode. She's like,
yes, me too.
I know it's kind of like, I don't know. It might sound a bit shallow, but she is adorable in this episode, regardless of her her career choices or her life choices. No, I thought she was great in this episode, and it was interesting to see straight. But they did kind of leave things linger in terms of her past. They kind of got straight into it, and they just wanted to just establish her backstory, which I thought was really brave. Because a lot of shows will drag these kind of things out, these big, we'll call it a twist. The twist of Kate's character is kind of unravelled quite quickly, which is, I found it quite refreshing at the time. Well, and obviously watched it back.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Especially following on from the pilot, because I think it's in part 2 where you get a bit of her. Well, especially when she's on the plane anyway. That's the flashback of those episodes, isn't it? Where they're on the plane and crashing.
Yeah.
But you get that knowledge that she was a prisoner for some reason. And then obviously that feeds almost immediately into those flashbacks. And I think as well, like you say, it's refreshing that it almost doesn't feel like it's a twist in a way, because they're just burning through material, but in a very, like we said last week, kind of efficient way.
Yeah.
It's very efficiently done.
You could probably make the argument that, okay, well, we've got like 10 characters in this ensemble cast, so we kind of need to get everyone established fairly quickly. And based on the title of the episode, it's about starting over. So, and I guess Kate was a pretty good personification of that, in terms of they've arrived on this island. I think Jack does this quote. I think Jack does a quote. It might be in episode 4 when he's speaking to Rose, and he says, like, we all died, like, when that plane crashed. And it's quite significant, I reckon, because they pretty much did. They're all like, their lives don't really, what they had before doesn't really matter at the moment. So,
yeah. The flashbacks, I always thought they were just a really interesting device to base every episode around. Like, I'm sure, like, I can't think of any, but I'm sure lots of shows did it before, but Lost is the first one that always comes to mind when you mention flashbacks. I guess it was sort of the thing that Lost became known for, I guess. Like, even right up until the end, they're not flashbacks then, we can get into that later, but they always have something like a side story. I think that's maybe sort of Lost's defining trait. I've written gimmick, but I don't think it's fair to call it a gimmick. But
No.
yeah, I just like it's fascinating. Although the flashbacks are always the reason I've struggled doing a rewatch before this, because like I know all the information already, so it's not as fun to watch sometimes if I'm on a rewatch.
I get what you mean, yeah.
So, which is why I'm glad that we're doing this, because it forces me to watch the episodes. But like, I just love them as a device.
Yeah.
Just
I know it.
Just the whoosh sound effect that takes you into them. It's just like, oh yeah, forgot all about this, and it's like it's just nice to see the backstory done in a way that's not just exposition.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the main takeaway from the pilots as well. Is it never felt like they were just throwing information at you. It was very done in a very natural way, and I think with the flashbacks as well, they either. I'm getting the sense of this from rewatching the season as a whole. Anyway, they either feed into the main island story, which they often do, and then there are a couple of blips where it's just kind of, we're not really sure how to tie this into what's happening right now on the island, but it's still a bit of an origin for said character. So you are getting a general idea about them, and then they do, as they go on, get better at it. But I mean, with this one, like you've already said, Scott, it's like the idea of starting over. And Kate's obviously very not trusting of people, and rightly so, because the bloody farmer rats her out. It upset me that. I don't know why. It just really angered me.
Was there not? I'm pretty sure there was a continuity error this early on. I might be completely wrong, but
Go on.
I'm pretty sure Kate says to Jack that she's a veggie, and she's eating bacon and eggs with the farmer.
I'm going to Google that now quickly.
Although maybe she's turned veggie on the plane. I don't know.
She just decided it, so it's no longer a continuity
clean
error.
slate. Maybe she's just had a change of heart.
Miss meat too much.
Oh, okay. So I think Scott's right, but it's not this So yeah, in this episode, she's eating the bacon and eggs in the flashback with Ray the farmer. It's in Walkabout, the next episode that we'll discuss, that she reveals she is a vegetarian, but the point still stands.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, oh dear, Mr. Lindelof, what are you playing at?
I guess it ties in with the boar in Walkabout, where they go hunting for the boar.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
But generally speaking,
this is Trixie. She could just be lying.
I always thought the marshal was really cool. I know he's a bit of a dick, but he's only doing his job. Really, he's just a bit of an arse about it.
I love how he gets such a bad rap in this episode because
he does.
Sawyer's trying to kill him, and he.
Is it this episode, by the way? Let me just refresh my mind. Is this the episode where he doesn't kill him, right, or is that the next one?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Even I watched it last night.
No, it is. It is this episode.
Is it this episode? Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But that I don't. They treat that so seriously in the show, and I was just laughing my arse off at that. I just was like, oh, it's such a Sawyer thing to happen, isn't it?
And he says to Jack, how long? And Jack's like, 4 days, but you're gonna suffer.
And then literally in the space of 2 minutes he walks out and there's the silence and he's just like, is he gone? And he's like, yep. Oh, we'll let it slide. But I think obviously you've got the main twist, follow on from the twist of the previous episode, that being guys, where are we? That immortal line said by Charlie, and the French transmission. And I believe this is the episode where they don't want to tell the survivors initially about this transmission because they don't want to cause panic. And then it follows into a variety of arguments and revelations. Hurley finds out about Kate's mugshot.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So you've got that very, I don't know if you agree or anything, but that very natural, almost like info dumping, like very natural feel that people are finding things out about one another even this early on in the series.
Yeah, just natural, just like discovery, just through regular means, finding pictures or documents. You could, just like general life, really, you can find things out without needing someone to actually verbally spell it out for you. This is what this person is like. You just kind of the characters explore the people around them by exploring the island effectively and the wreckage, and they just because Hurley and Claire's collecting up bits from the wreckage
for the fuselage. Yeah.
So it's a good plot device to find out more stuff about the characters.
And this, I think. Oh, sorry, go on, John.
We know because we've seen the series before, like what the characters are called, but it's quite strange because some of the other characters haven't actually met each other yet. So at this point in the show, if we were watching it for the first time, we wouldn't know what some of these characters are called. Like we just know, that's Australian pregnant woman, But I just thought it was very, very strange. Like the character introductions on the show are often our first look into who these people are, and it just feels very natural. It's like an awkward meet cute. It just happens to be on a monster infested island.
I think Jill and Son have been actually named because we know that Son can speak English, but neither of them have interacted in English with any other characters. So we still don't know who they are specifically. But no, you're right. I noticed that because I don't think Claire's named until Walkabout. I don't think officially. And she's like one of those central characters for the first few seasons.
And also,
But I
sorry.
guess it's just a symptom of the really large
Yeah.
cast, I guess, which is one of its strength as well. But again, saying that, we're only on episode 3 here, so I guess, you know, spacing out the introduction to the cast is a pretty good way to go about it, because otherwise it would just feel like a big massive info dump.
I mean, that's a good point actually, because you've got to think about it as well. This early on, they're trying to do flashbacks and an origin story for one character on their own, but then everything on the island is happening whilst, like you say, you've got to introduce certain characters as well. And it's like, how much can the audience take? And I think it runs a very fine line, but it works.
60 million can manage it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's a testament, definitely. The viewership for the next episode, I think, is like 500,000 up. So,
okay.
So go to Opta Index again, but so clearly it's the format, the way that it was written, it worked really well. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think my next point that I had written down was this was probably one of the main. The origins of Michael getting not bothered by Walt, but at least immortalizing his main line of the whole series, really, because I think he gets a bit pissed off that Walt's talking to Locke.
Yeah,
and says, "Stay away from that man," and that's just a very, very familiar line throughout the entire first season.
Well, Michael's a dick. Anyway, I can't stand Michael, and he's obviously we're going to get to his ultimate fate. But I hate him anyway, and but ironically, I mean, he had bad vibes at Locke, and it's kind of right if you look on it on the whole, but not entirely right, but kind of right. Locke was a bit of a what we call maybe a bit of a bad egg, but maybe not entirely because it wasn't him. But yeah, we could jump forward. But I do try to look for like foreshadowing this early on.
Same.
Because there's that debate about when the writer's strike happened in 07, 08, and Lost was one of the victims of that. People were obviously then starting to cast their eye over, continuity errors and things like that. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff that was introduced, the themes and the characters and where they were heading, it is kind of a lot of it is good foreshadowing for what's going to happen to them. Well, that's what I found anyway.
No, I totally agree, and like we've already had the idea of duality with backgammon introduced in the pilot. Obviously, that's a massive thread throughout the whole series. But I mean, I'm just trying to think of other things in this episode.
That's another great thing, the backgammon thing, because it's such a simple plot device. The duality of
I agree.
man, good and evil, but you can extend that out and you can elaborate on that so much, and it's just like it's a tropey concept, it's a concept trope of a lot of shows, a lot of films. So, but yeah, it's how you use that.
Yeah, and whether they meant to, but obviously it's definitely ties into the whole Jacob and Man in Black thing, which we come to see much later on in the series. But Jacob being, I guess, white and light, and obviously the Man in Black being dark, epitome of darkness and evil. So I've got that going for you.
Off topic.
Yep.
While I was doing my research, my Wikipedia. I did find some interesting facts about 2004. They're both related, but I saw the most popular boys' names recorded for the US in 2004. Guess what it was?
Don't tell me Walt.
Well, it's a name affiliated with the show. So
okay.
In the US, it was Jacob.
Okay.
And guess what it was in the UK the same year?
Charlie.
Jack.
Ooh.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I don't know if that's a proven
lost it tantalized pop culture in such a way.
It kind of had its influence on the world.
But I will say, I think at its peak in the UK, and again, this is totally unheard of for UK TV, I think it reached nearly 6 million viewers an episode, something daft like that. I'd have to double check that, obviously, but I do think it did get that high at its peak.
I wouldn't be that surprised if it was more, because think about it, Channel 4, it's a free channel that most people would have had. It wasn't a
Yeah.
premium channel that you had to get on the subscription or like Sky or Virgin. So, yeah, I would say easily.
I'm just going to have a quick look. See if I can find anything.
Like, I think back when it was on Channel 4 for the first 2 seasons, like, we didn't have Sky at the time, and when it moved to Sky, I think that's whenever, like, my parents decided, okay, we're gonna get. Let's say my parents, it was me and my dad. We're like, we're gonna get Sky in because we're not missing Lost.
I used to go around my mate's house because I was same, but I just lived with my mum, and she couldn't afford it at the time. So I was like, how am I going to watch Lost? I was exactly the same. She was like, do you have any friends that watch it? I'm like, we all watch it. And she was like, well, just arrange to go around there. It's every night. And I'm like, mate, can I come round and watch Lost? He's like, okay. Right, I can't. Oh, wait, United Kingdom. So, okay, so in season 1, generally speaking, in the United Kingdom on Channel 4, the premiere averaged around 6.75 million, and then the finale was about 5.3.
What, the season 1 or the show finale?
Yeah, season 1 finale. Apologies.
Okay.
So throughout the whole season, I'd imagine it, between those two figures, basically.
Yeah.
Mad. You wouldn't get that now.
No, not even for Hollyoaks.
Channel 4's like diamond jewel.
Yeah, definitely.
So what
anyway,
back before everything was on streaming or whatever. Just back before streaming really took off.
Oh yeah, definitely.
As I say, it keep coming back to the whole water cooler thing, but everybody watched Lost and everybody talked about it. So, so good, so good.
That advert was absolute ball bag.
Oh yeah, that was.
That was something. Yes, I watched that as well. And that was only for us in the UK.
I think I said last week. I thought it was. I think so. It looked like a very expensive advert to just be made for Channel 4, but
I did some research.
It was something else.
I did some research as one would, and it was filmed. I can't remember his name. I think it's his surname is Chappelle. He is a fashion designer. He was a fashion designer, and he wanted.
Imagine that Dave Chappelle directing.
I was literally, bear with me 2 seconds, because I'm like, this ain't Dave Chappelle, is it? It'd be really funny if it was. I'm sure it was called Chappelle. Hold on a second, I'm trying to find it. But basically, he wanted to kind of try and do some foreshadowing with the dancing, and the idea that they kept swapping partners, and to kind of foreshadow various things within their characters. But interestingly, Kate's not Kate. Sorry, I'm getting my characters mixed up. Claire's not pregnant in it either, in that teaser.
Oh, okay.
But I just thought it was really funny how Locke was like the orchestra. He was like leading the orchestra, just stood there, and I'm like, "There's fire on the." It was an interesting ad. Right, I can't find it, but it was definitely done by like some fashion dude. Oh dear, it definitely was.
With like a fragrance advert.
Yeah, because even in the voiceover, they're all whispering, and you can just imagine them like going L'Oreal, or like I don't know brands that well, but you know what I mean. It's just very silly. And then obviously we've got our mate Booney in there dancing with everyone. We'll get to it, but I've just watched his bloody episode, and it's not good. Anyway. We'll get to that in due course. So
I thought it was quite fun.
Yep.
No, I just thought it was quite fun. Like, they start setting up what will become, I guess, the set for much of the first season. You know, they're sort of repurposing the plane to make wee shelters, and it's like, on a show like this, you don't really have a set as such, but it's quite nice to see that forming, that's starting to the familiar locations. You know, it's like, oh, that's where so and so sleeps. That's where they keep all the food. That's where they do all this. I just thought it was quite fun for a show that's essentially set on the beach for much of the first season. That they're setting up these identifiable landmarks that you'll recognize week in and week out.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you get that when you, especially where I am currently in the rewatch. You know, the camera often stays the same when it kind of goes to Sawyer's tent, for example, or goes to where Jin and Sun are. There are all these recognizable spots. So I think that's a really good point, actually, because you know, ultimately they divide up and go to the caves, which we'll get to, but you know, there's that split, and then you're starting to get these locations and branching out into what this island could be.
I think it's clearly a purposeful thing that they've done, because obviously, even though they're all just tents and like kind of temporary shelters, but the way they're framed and the way the viewer sees it, you instantly are familiar with it, regardless of whether the character's there or not. So if you saw one character who wasn't in their own tent and someone else's tent, you know that they're not in the. Do you know what I mean? It's just that way of familiarising yourself with the location, because they're all going to look the same to a degree. So it's just a clever way of establishing that.
Absolutely. And just one point that I've just realised as well, further, I guess, lending to what will become the mythology of the series, just off the point of duality. The whole blank slate concept, Tabula Rasa, was actually attributed to the philosopher known as John Locke, regarding how he believed humans are born without built-in mental content and therefore learn from their life experiences, essentially.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
Exactly.
Look at this.
So it's getting even better, isn't it?
Lindelof, you're a hack.
Everyone slags him off, but have you seen Watchmen?
I'll tell you what, I know it's slightly kind of off topic, but I liked it, but then it kind of just disappointed me at the end.
I'd have to rewatch it. Well, I'd loved it, but I can see where you're coming from, is all I'll say. And I'll leave that one at the door for now. I was just like, you know, in awe of that soundtrack, because I will worship the feet of Trent Reznor any day of the week. So, but that's getting off topic. Yeah. So we'll move on slightly to what we've already had a good giggle about, I guess. But the Marshal's pain begins to sadly worsen, and his screams of pain disturbed the survivors. I thought it was quite amusing how he was screaming for pain, and I think it's Shannon who was like, "Oh my God, won't he just shut up?" And you just think, go, you're a terrible. Yeah, exactly. Go away. Shut up. Go suntan or whatever. But then you've also got this whole thing with like Kate, who's you're almost like, does she want to kill him? Because at that point, I think it's only Jack that really knows, and maybe Hurley, about who she is. I can't really remember, actually, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But
I can't remember. But
no,
sorry, John.
You're right. Oh no, sorry. I was just saying it is. I think this is where the episode where Hurley finds out and sort of freaks out about it.
Yeah.
But I think like by the time the decision comes around, you know, where she goes to speak to him, just the two of them, I think the flashback has sort of done the work so that you know that she won't do it. You know. I think it's done enough good storytelling with, you know, her pulling the farmer out of the car, that you know that this isn't the type of person she is. It like the whole episode really hammers home the fugitive with a heart of gold type thing.
Yeah.
So I think by that stage, you know, it's not going to be her. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But
no, I definitely got that vibe.
I remember it happening.
Definitely got that vibe, and I think it's just, it also reiterates kind of Sawyer's. I don't want to say can-do attitude. I'm trying to think of the right way to describe him.
He's more proactive than most of the others.
Yeah. Well, ironically, and I guess pun intended, trigger happy, literally, and you know, metaphorically, I guess.
Itchy
He is,
finger, yeah.
yeah, itchy trigger finger. He's straight into that. But also as well, I've just remembered, like, you've got a bit more fleshing out of Jack in this as well, because obviously he's at that point where I don't know if this is meant to be set a couple of days after they've crashed, or is it kind of in the immediate aftermath of the pilot? But he's still in that hero mode that we mentioned last week, where he's doing his absolute utmost to do everything, even to the point where it's breaking him. He clearly can't manage it.
Yeah.
And it's just these little mannerisms that are being thrown out at you that are obviously going to lend themselves to the series later on.
Yeah, there's Matthew Fox has these moments where, even though, like we discussed last week, that he's got a very likable way about him, like in the way both the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he kind of he conducts himself as Jack. But there's little moments in this episode where you see his face and he looks like he's actually suffering, like he's really struggling, but he kind of pulls himself back from the brink and composes himself. It's really interesting. I've not noticed it until I started to rewatch it, but I found it's something I picked up on.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've just remembered, John, what you mentioned last week about how when literally at the very start of the series, when he wakes up for the first time, does he stop for a minute to let the fear in? I didn't check that.
The 5-second rule.
The 5-second rule, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to go back and check as well.
I might have to check that for next time.
Was this the episode where Jack speaks to Rose, or was it Walkabout?
That's the next
that's
one.
Walkabout. That's Walkabout, yeah. So we'll just get to the
I thought the
sorry, go on.
Sorry, no. I was just on Sawyer going into the tent as well. I thought it showed up the I guess the bravado of him. He thinks he's the man that can get the job sorted, but he just mucks it up, which I think fits with his character later on, because he's meant to be isn't he a con man?
Yes.
Like, am I remembering that?
Yeah, he is.
He is. So I think it sort of fits into his character a bit. That he's all mouth and no trousers.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
He's all bravado.
I think that also starts, I guess it begins what will be the strange love triangle you have between Sawyer, Jack, and Kate, because she's called upon Sawyer because, like you say, he's got that bravado about him. He's got that can-do attitude. He's got that itchy trigger finger. He can put this guy out of his misery, because obviously I think the marshal basically asks her to put him out of his misery because he's in so much pain. He's clearly going to die anyway, no matter what Jack is capable of. He's not going to be able to keep him alive. But I guess I don't know if there's intentional humor in Sawyer missing the shot, but I just think it's how we watch it nowadays. At the time, I thought, oh my god,
I think
that's a
yeah. So I think a lot of it stems from just Sawyer's reaction, like when he comes out.
Yeah, and he's convinced he's done it, isn't he? He's like, I did what nobody else could do, and then you just hear the blood curdle in his marshal's mouth, and you're like, oh no, oh no. And it's like he's already in pain, and what's he done? Like perforated his lung or something like that. Anyway,
Sawyer.
I think,
and then
sorry, Tom.
No, you go, Scott. It's fine.
I was going to say it's kind of it sows those seeds of Jack. Even though it's obviously it's a serious thing. It's a man's life, but the way that scene plays out, Sawyer he's got egg on his face, and Jack doesn't have to do anything, and immediately he looks better, and that must really piss him off. I just thought it was really clever a way of doing it.
Yeah. And that adds that friction that obviously goes on throughout the series, especially the first season, because like Sawyer's like he's public enemy number one really for like the early part anyway of season one. So it's just a way of building up all this shit against him so that you can kind of tear it down, because he has got a heart of gold really, as we find out later on. But it's just a product of his environment, the poor chap. I will say there's a line, I won't mention it because obviously we'll talk about the episode. I can't remember which episode it is, but there's a specific line that I absolutely love the way he says it, and it's just because of Josh Holloway's Texan accent, but it's fantastic. So I'll save that one for later. So getting towards the end of Tabula Rasa, so Locke finds Vincent. The bloody dog finally is found using his makeshift dog whistle, which I thought was a very, even in the early days, a very Locke thing to do. He knows what he's a man about the island. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I didn't even. I thought it was. I thought it was like munching on like a breadstick or something. I didn't know it was a whistle because I had the volume quite low, and I had like subtitles on. So I was just watching him just blow this thing, and I thought, oh, he's having a little breadstick.
He really does know his way around the island and to get some bread from somewhere.
Just fashioned a breadstick out of some leaves.
If anyone could do it, John Locke could do it. So yeah,
it's quite nice. The episodes. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. You go.
No, I think this was the first episode that did that thing that Lost kind of does a lot, where there's a traumatic episode for most of the running time, and then something quite nice happens at the end, and then have the nice sort of happy montage, where everybody's cheering and smiling at each other on the beach, and then they undercut it with something right in the last second, which they do here. There's like the close up on Locke's face after he's rescued Vincent, and you're like, what's up with him now? But I think maybe half the episodes end that way with a happy montage, and then like your stinger for the next episode.
Absolutely,
which I always liked, because again, there's that great score in those moments. But again, it's a bit of a lost trope. But it's a enjoyable one though.
Oh yeah, because I never wanted to go into like you'd. It's a point of TV, really, but you don't want to go into the next episode thinking everything's all right. You need that last minute kick in the nuts to think, "Ooh, something's not quite right." And given that we've just mentioned that, it ends on Locke's face, that can bring us neatly in to episode 4, which I believe is entitled Walkabout.
It is.
So, how many watch this one, Scott?
Oh, sorry. That's my cue, isn't it? Sorry. Okay.
That's your cue, mate.
I can cut that out. Okay, so...
I'll cut that one out.
Episode 4. It's Walkabout. Aired the week after, obviously, October 13th, 2004. It was directed by Jack Bender, again, and written by David Fury, who was a prolific writer for Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, Angel as well, and a little show called 24.
Damn it! Sorry.
So yeah, so David Fury, I think he was an executive producer for 24 as well. So this guy, he knew his onions, both before and after Lost. He's honed his craft a bit, and interestingly, this, I think I mentioned it. It said, I think it was an increase, an increase of $1.5 million from the previous week. So I said 500,000 earlier on. It's actually $1.5 million. And also, it was voted by IGN, but I put in brackets in my notes, who cares? I hate them.
Agreed.
The 5th best episode of the entire show. So, I think The Constant is number 1 on that list. But again, I hate IGN. So,
and just to state, if anyone's listening, these are our views and nobody else's. Yeah, just because we don't like IGN doesn't mean that we, others don't like them. That's absolutely fine.
I'm not endorsing them, put it that way.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that it went up by that many viewers. I guess that was just good word of mouth from the first 3 episodes, I guess, that more people tuned in.
Definitely. And I think there's a known... something that along the fanship call any episode which kind of gets people interested in the show is now called the Walkabout effect, because of the effect that this episode had on Lost on its own. So,
oh wow,
it's transcended its own.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my notes that I made about this, I think it's very easy to say that this is already a significant chapter in the history of Lost. Obviously, at the time, you wouldn't have known that, but it persuaded the viewers, I think, of the series, existence, basically, how it could exist in the long term.
Definitely.
Because it showed that you got all these surprises and mysteries. And I think one of my notes here, Lindelof has been quoted as saying it was considered like a litmus test for the viewership, especially regarding the twist around Locke, which I'd argue is probably the first major twist of the series so far. But also, interestingly, from a production point of view, this was the episode that made ABC order a full series. So it was originally 13, and then they ordered the back 9, and it was this episode that convinced them to do so. So it's a fairly significant episode for the whole series, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Lots happened with it. So let's dive in then. So Walkabout central premise is Mr. John Locke, who I don't know about you guys, but he's definitely up there in top 3 for me. Top 3 characters.
Yeah, definitely.
No, yeah, no, absolutely.
I think it's a general Lost thing, whether you ended up liking the show or not. He's just by far easily the most interesting character anyway.
I think Terry O'Quinn is the most. I think he's the best performer in the whole show.
Oh God,
He might not
no
be
question.
a character, but he's definitely the best performing actor, without a doubt.
Yeah,
I love Desmond.
yeah, I would I would absolutely agree. Even when he's doing something that personally you wouldn't like, you don't think is best for the Islanders. I'm thinking specifically. I think it's end of season 3, start of season 4. I can't remember, where he's just convinced that the island is this thing that they don't need to leave, and you're just like, yeah, but John, I get where you're coming from, but also I really want these people to get off the island. But he is the sort of. I think he's the person that everybody thinks about when they think about Lost. I mean, yes, you have your sort of your lead 3 of, I guess, Jack, Kate, and Sawyer, but he's always the first person I think of when I think of Lost.
Yeah, he epitomizes the show. I think Hurley's like your heart and soul, because he's, like we said last week, he's the nice guy, he's the everyman, and then Locke's the mysterious, interesting representation, really, of the island in a way, in a very bizarre way. He's the one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll get to it, but I'm pretty sure this is the episode where he sees the monster.
Yes.
We don't see it, obviously, but
Yes,
he does. So that lends some credit.
And he also doesn't
his
say anything, does he? He says he didn't say anything.
Correct. So you're already a bit suspicious of him, I'd say. And it also makes you think, why does he not want to eat him? Because it munched Mr. Abrams' best friend in the pilot. So
do we actually find out what happened in that gap where Kate and Michael come back and Locke doesn't? Do we find out actually at some point what happened when he sees Mr. Smokey?
I don't know.
I don't think so. That's a
when
good
I was
question.
watching it today, when I was watching it today, I was like, is this just really fortunate? Is this good foreshadowing, or is it just really fortunate that Locke ended up being, again, not to spoil anything, I know you have seen it, but it's like that Locke ended up being the manifestation of the smoke monster? Like, is that just really, really good foreshadowing, or was it just a stroke of luck?
Perhaps a bit of both.
Because
I was going to say,
because through the story, they were brought to the island. Again, I'm forgetting lots of Lost mythology here, but when I was watching it today, I was like, oh, that's quite clever, or incredibly lucky.
Well, I think when you, especially with both with TV shows and with films, with franchise films, definitely, they do try to retroactively, make things fit. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It just makes it flow better and it makes it more complete. So I don't. Yeah, even if they didn't plan what they had planned to look later on. If they didn't have that initially, then it's still, I reckon it's still really clever writing in terms of the
Yeah,
character.
I agree. I think it's
Yeah.
like one of those happy accidents if it's the case, because
Okay.
it's like one of those things that they just, yeah, we didn't plan it, but oh my god, we gave ourselves so much story here unintentionally. It's
I
brilliant.
remember. I think it was Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you have watched that, but they came up with the concept of the Final Five, like the Cylons that were the secret ones. And when they came up with that, they didn't obviously know who they were going to be. So they sort of wrote themselves into a corner and just had to write themselves out of it. And maybe this was, again, I'm sure there's lots of instances in Lost where the same thing happens. Um, and some people find the answers that they've come up with satisfying, and quite famously, some people don't in the case of Lost. But yeah, I mean, writers' rooms get a lot of flack, but I mean, you have to be pretty clever to write even a halfway satisfying conclusion to the mysteries that you've set
That's
up.
it.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, and I think Lost. I can think of one instance much later on down the line, but when they introduced the Oceanic Six, I know for a fact that they introduced that plot line and purposefully didn't know which six they would have as like the survivors.
The-
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I think they had like maybe Jack and Kate. Spoiler alert for anyone who's we're jumping ahead very quick, but yeah, Jack and Kate were like the mainstays, but then the other four, they were very specific about when they introduced them over the course of season 4 in the flashbacks or flash
Yeah.
forward, should I say?
They were spread out.
But they purposefully did it in a way that they kind of thought, right, who is the most logical character to make it work with what's happening on the island as well as where our endpoint is. So that's the only example I can think of at the time. I mean, I guess you could argue the monster itself already. You know, you've obviously not seen it, whether that's from a CGI perspective or obviously to keep the mystery of it. It's like Jaws, isn't it? It's, you know, don't show your monster just yet. It's more effective when you don't see it. But they can't really have known what they wanted it to be at that point. Surely that's clearly an example of writing yourself into a corner.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't, but I'm sure by like season 5, season 6, like they're bored in their writers' room. Must have looked like that Always Sunny meme with Charlie, you know, just red string pointing to every single character,
Pepe
every
Sylvia.
single instance of the monster.
Carol in HR. There isn't a Carol in HR.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just one of my favorite episodes of that show. Just him knocking on the door like, Carol. Anyway, digress. So, John's flashback. So, like we said last week, you get a very brief instance of him in the pilot episode, but he's not really focal as such, apart from to explain the duality of backgammon. But this is the first instance where, and it's that beautiful thing again that we liked last week, where flashbacks and other characters cross over in everyone's flashbacks. So you see the same thing over and over again from a different perspective. But this is where John wakes up and he realizes he can walk again.
Yeah.
Wiggling his big toe. Couldn't help but think of Kill Bill. Just me, probably. And that's when Jack calls him over to help lift the wreckage of the survivor, and he's immediately called into action. And I get the feeling that, as you know, that's the kind of thing that immediately he would have liked. And he's not even thought about really the fact that he can feel his legs and he can walk. He's just like, yeah, I can do this. This island's great. Let's go. Called into action. But then you get
absolutely. I think it's...
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. No, I just like I've written down here. I think it's a pretty good reasoning for why Locke would immediately believe that the island is special, because who wouldn't in that case? You know, it's just it immediately makes you believe that he believes that this island is special. And even though I just said that, you know, he annoys me later when he keeps going on about that, but it's like it's just nailed on from that moment. You know, that he would believe this. He would be the man of faith to Jack's man of science. You know, It's again, I don't want to keep talking about efficient storytelling, but it really is.
Well, that brings me on. I was going to use it in this example too, but that brings me on to the whole. Generally, the flashbacks as a whole, from the very first instance of them to the very last, the efficiency in which they make it so. I'm trying to get my words out here. Basically, the way that they make you realize that you don't see his legs. Basically,
You don't know.
he's always sat down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it's always in a position where he's at work, and oh, I sit at a desk at work. Fair enough. Or I'm sat on my bed when he's talking to his phone sex girlfriend operator, whatever.
Oh, Helen. Yeah.
But Helen, yeah. But there's all these examples, isn't there, where you wouldn't be none the wiser. These are all regular things that everybody does, and then you get that first smack in the nuts right at the end where you're like, oh my god. Because even now, that's still a very powerful end to that flashback for me, I find.
By the travel agent or the
Yeah,
it's great.
and I think it's much like we said about Jack as well. That whole flashback tells you everything, albeit briefly, you need to know about Locke as a character going forward.
Yeah, especially in these early episodes, you need that quick hit to know who these people are. Obviously, in the next 2 or 3 seasons, we'll get the flashbacks get even more fleshed out. But this early in the season, you just need to know, okay, this is this person, this is their story, this is why they're the way they are, as quickly as possible to suck you in. And again, that's just the perfect way to introduce Locke's whole philosophy, I guess. And yeah, it's as you say, the reveal is kind of obvious in hindsight, but they hide it so well, and you'd never think that would be the case. And then there's the repeated mantra of "Don't tell me what I can't do." And again, with it's just such a good. It's really drilled into your head over the course of the episode, and then
I was going to say, don't you think that line initially? That's again something anybody could potentially say in that moment. It's a fairly natural thing to say. Don't tell me what I can't do if you're feeling a bit angry. But then to know that later on down the line, the origins of that line is even more fleshed out in this character. It's again that efficiency of storytelling and knowing where they were going with these characters. It just blows my mind. It really does.
Yeah.
It just really does.
I made a few notes concerning the episode. I thought were really there's some little funny moments and there's some very clever moments. So in regards to Locke, so when we meet him in the flashback, he's in his little at his desk and he's on the phone, and you hear the word he's being called corporal, is it, or something, or something like that. And then we later find out it's to do with a tabletop game. But his boss Randy and asked for the TPS reports, and then there's a nice little Office Space reference. I don't know if you've seen Office Space.
Yes, I've noticed. I noticed that.
Brilliant. I think a lot of shows and films based in that kind of setting nowadays tend to reference TPS reports whenever they can. So I like that. That was cool. And I've also noted down that Randy is a twat. So but the bit I liked it is when that I liked especially when they were interacting is when they're in the canteen or like the staff common room, and he mocks John because John sees himself as a leader, and Randy mocks him for it. Says like, you can't do it because you're I don't think he explicitly says because you're a paraplegic, but he pretty much alludes to that, saying you can't do a walkabout in Australia, you can't lead people. Again, nice foreshadowing. And on that same line about John's paraplegia, before we find out that John lost the use of his legs, there's a bit where they're collecting firewood, and some unnamed character walks to a frame with John's wheelchair loaded up with firewood, and I thought that was really clever. Just kind of
Oh yeah,
just pops
forgot
in
about
from the
that.
frame. I thought it was really nice.
I'm pretty sure as well.
Oh, okay.
Just to skip back to Tabula Rasa, I'm pretty sure Charlie is using it to move some luggage at one point.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Uh,
Oh wow.
yeah,
I didn't notice that.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he is using it. Oh wow, that's even cooler.
There's just so many things I noticed in this episode. It's just just really clever. And I suppose you can call it. You can like load it in with the mythology. Like all these little bits and pieces that look back on, you notice. It's even better when you're purposely looking for it, not being told, but
Absolutely.
you just kind of notice it just through, just naturally just watching what's going on around it. There's a few other notes I've got here. I quite liked the interaction between Claire and Jack when Claire's proposing about this memorial thing. And Jack kind of says, "Oh, it's not my thing," and Claire seems quite surprised by it because obviously Jack, up until now, Jack has been he's taken the lead on pretty much everything. But then when he's been asked to kind of publicly speak, I don't know, he seems uncomfortable with that, which I thought was really interesting. And also we find out that Shannon is, more of a cunt than we initially. She kind of, what does she do? She lures poor Charlie.
It's where she gets Charlie to fish for him.
Takes advantage of poor Charlie and his good nature to get a fish for her. I don't know. I don't know what it's clearly. I was trying to think back to. Was there some kind of like weird, almost what's the word? Incestual relationship between Boone and Shannon? I don't know because they.
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, I think they're like they're stepbrother, like step siblings. I think
Correct.
Or like half siblings.
Oh, okay.
The stepbrother and sister.
So it's kind of like forbidden fruit almost.
Not really.
Yeah, not blood related, but it's still a no-go.
Yeah. Well, come on, Tom. Let's just not always.
Well, I'm sorry to Boone and Shannon. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, there's a few other notes, but no, they're not really. They're not as good as those ones, I find.
Well, I think the other thing to point out. Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. I keep interrupting you.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say that I think the other big premise of this episode, just outside of Locke, is this is definitely where Jack's fighting fatigue, and he is trying to do everything that he possibly can. And as we've already alluded to, he checks in with Rose. I always thought this was a really lovely moment because is this where they just sat on the beach?
Yeah.
And she doesn't say anything?
Initially, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Initially, yeah, but I just love that idea that she's clearly still in shock about everything, but she's absolutely certain that her husband's still alive, and Jack's just in his very Matthew Fox way, as we've already asserted. He just kind of says, "We'll just sit here, it's fine," and I think that again sums up qualities that Jack has. But then also, and I guess we may not have known it at the time, but it also introduces Christian Shepherd into the series for the very first time, even if he isn't portrayed by John Terry at this point.
No.
But again, was this amazing foreshadowing on the writer's part, or was this something that they picked up later? Because I'm pretty sure they've since confirmed that was meant to be the Man in Black impersonating the dead people.
Right, and not just a manifestation of Jack's mind.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, either option would still make sense. But yeah, retroactively saying if it's meant to be the smoke monster, if any of those visions or like ghosts, if you want to call them ghosts of people's loved ones, if they're meant to be manifestations of Smokey, then fine. Of course, it still makes sense.
Yeah. And I think doesn't it happen later on in the series as well with isn't it what's the name of the guy? He's one of the tail section. He's like the preacher, Mr.
Oh,
Echo.
Mr. Echo.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Triple A. I love that guy.
Doesn't he see like his brother or something?
Yeah,
So
mate.
yeah, I think retroactively they sort of
Oh, yeah, me. Oh, I'm remembering it
they've
all.
made that work.
I mean, one thing I'd like to point out as well, and this is something that blew my mind, and if they didn't write this in intentionally, they really struck gold here. And unfortunately, it means jumping all the way to the finale for a very, very brief moment. But the very nature of Christian Shepherd's name, and you think about what he does in the very last scene in a church, shepherding them on to the afterlife. And I just sat there and I remember thinking to myself, you fucking geniuses. Now, just to skip back forward to this episode, if you're telling me that Lindelof and the crew didn't write that in on purpose, then, fair play. They struck gold unintentionally, but I no, you've got to write stuff like that in.
I know we're jumping ahead, but okay, I'll say I wasn't a big fan of the finale. However, people are named on purpose in this show, without a doubt. Certain people are named on purpose. So so I can honestly admit that was very clever, and I think that definitely was something that they had. They didn't have it fully fleshed out on paper, but I think it was a concept that they had in like a rough draft form, at least. That's where they were heading.
It can't not have been. I'm sorry. Yeah. I find it's too
obvious.
Hard to not believe it. Yeah, it's too obvious now.
Too much of a coincidence if it wasn't.
Yeah, it's just perfect. Yeah. Such a clever little thing. But yeah, I forgot where I was now, just gushing about my favourite things about the finale. But we'll get there eventually. Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is where the other, if we've got like plot A, B, and C, I guess, there's lots of things happening here. So we've got Locke in one, then John in the other. I guess plot C would be the crew coming back from getting the transmission, triangulating the transmission, and we get attacked by the boar.
Yeah.
Is that this one? Yeah. Or the hunting for the boars?
With the Evil Dead camera.
Yeah. The first of many examples of the Evil Dead camera in Lost, which is fantastic. Funny little note that I've written. They had to obviously use computer-generated boars instead. Apparently, they'd actually originally planned on using actual domesticated animals, but they were too expensive to get from the US. So they went with the computer-generated boar instead.
Well, you only see it for a fraction of a second, if that, just zooming past them. But yeah, I think that's where the Evil Dead camera is so it's obviously overdone in a lot of different media, but it's so effective. Yeah, really effective.
I think as well the CGI in this show, I mean, definitely in the early days, it's not as bad as I remember it being, because you get such little glimpses of the polar bear, for example. And I know we joked about, last week it was clearly a model at times and things like that, but the boars, often when you see them, if they are CGI'd in, it's often in between leaves and reeds and things like that. It's actually really well done to say it was a show that's going on 17 years old. Yeah,
there was a heavy reliance. They tried to be as practical as they could, using what they had to their advantage. But after something I remember following last week with the polar bear, I was thinking, have any of you guys been to America? And I know, Tommy, you went on honeymoon, didn't you? But to Disney, didn't you?
Did indeed.
There's like a Coca-Cola store, and you can go in there and you get your photo taken with a man dressed in a polar bear costume. I was thinking, why don't they just get that? Just
that dude.
Yeah, just get that dude. Because it's it looks the real deal, and he can just stand there. It's why don't you get Coca-Cola bear? He's just standing there, just drinking a pint of Diet Coke or something, just chilling out.
You're going to ruin the episode now that explains the polar bears. We're going to have to bring up Diet Coke polar bear again now, aren't we? Later on down the line. Why not? I'm just trying to think where we end up. Where we end up in the end. So yeah, Locke obviously catches a boar for the first time. Everyone's getting very hungry. And this is obviously after Jax ran after the man in the suit, which is the manifestation of his dad. And they find that they've got the dead boar. So you've already got the hunter of the group now. In fact, is this the episode where Locke gets out all his knives?
Yes, it's brilliant.
I was going to say, let's just talk about that for a minute, because I just remember it's one of those things where it's like Crocodile Dundee, where, you know, you call that a knife, this is a knife, but instead it's like 20 of them.
It's like, how did you get that knife? And he said, oh, checked it in. It's brilliant.
Yeah, yes. There's a line, it's like, was that a carry? Charlie says something like, was that a carry-on? No, I checked it in. So you already know that Locke's more than capable of doing all this. And he's going to be the main provider for a time anyway. And then I guess the final thing is, following on from Tabula Rasa, is putting all the fuselage together to hold a memorial service for the dead.
But are they?
Which again, what? Sorry.
I say, but are they?
Well, that's what the whispers are. I'm assuming anyway.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those moments for me personally that I think Lost always excelled at. It's quite a poignant. It's a very poignant moment, and it brings a nice little close to this very brief chapter of Locke, because he sees his wheelchair burning as well.
Yeah.
As part of the fuselage. So whilst Claire's reading off all these names, and you're like, oh my, all these people have died, and sending them on the way, you've got this end of one life of John Locke, and now he's in the other.
Yeah, I guess you can attribute the Tabula Rasa concept to him as well in this episode.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Very, very good.
Definitely. I never thought about that, actually. That's really good.
There's also a bit, because we don't know a lot about him, I might be overthinking this bit, but Jin starts to become a bit more concerned with Sun. He says that she's like dirty, she needs a wash, and he kind of helps, tells her to go and clean herself up, before Michael stumbles across her naked.
Is that this episode?
I believe so, but it was kind of actually, let me just check. No, sorry, it's the previous episode. Ignore everything I've just said. But yeah, it just based on that, and based on John and Kate, what happened with them, just seeing Jin suddenly, all of a sudden, just having a change in terms of how he is to Sun. That might, Tabula Rasa thing might come into play with him as well.
Yeah, I often find that episode titles are very, more so now, I often look for it, but I think it's I say the fault of Lost, that I look at episode titles now, so because they are extremely important, and will often give you everything you need to know about the episode, even if it's a twist that you don't expect. Walkabout's very self-explanatory in one sense, but then obviously you've got all the metaphorical reasonings behind it as well. So I think that's a key point that's carried on throughout the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as on the nose as saying finale or the end, I guess.
Well, we'll let that one slide, because
but then pilot could have double meaning. Because
absolutely,
that's just a nice little quinky dink.
And you could argue that it's the only show that could really get away with that as well, given its nature. I can't really think of any others. There's an episode in season 2 that I was reading about today. Well, I'll just say the name. It's called 2 for the Road. And it was only today when I was reading about it that I realised why it was called that. And I thought, again, holy shit, you clever bastards. But we'll get there eventually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I only just realised, I've watched it so many times, and it's heartbreaking. But then I think, oh my God, yeah, that makes so much sense. Anyway, so I think we've come to the end again, guys. I think we can call that a logical conclusion.
Yeah. So how does it end again?
So What, this specific episode?
Watching
Watch his chair burn.
Yes.
Yeah, watching the wheelchair burn on the funeral pyre,
Yeah.
I guess.
And he has a little grin to himself, I think. He has a little smile.
Yeah.
Such a smarmy
But
bastard.
we know it. He is. he knows he's seen the monster at this point. He's lucky.
He has got all the chips in his hand, basically. I think
He does.
That's why he didn't tell him about Smokey. He doesn't want to give the game away. He doesn't want to give away the fact that he has all the power, effectively, which
And
he
he
can
knows
use
it.
against Jack later on. So very clever.
Just one little tidbit. Can we please continue to call the smoke monster Smokey throughout this entire podcast, please?
I think
that's
yeah.
I think that's
definitely.
that's a perfect little name for it, because I just always say the smoke monster, but Smokey's much better.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you guys once again.
So
And next week,
yes, I was about to ask that. What's the next episode?
the next episodes to come are, I will tell you because I have season 1 in front of me right now, is White Rabbit and House of the Rising Sun. And White Rabbit is a Jack-centric episode, and House of the Rising Sun is Jin and Sun.
Yeah. If I remember rightly, is that the one? Yeah, sorry. No, I won't talk about it now, but I'm excited to talk about that one. That's one of my favourite episodes from the season.
Which one, White Rabbit or...
House of the Rising Sun.
It's a very good one, I
Yeah.
agree. It is a very good one. Wicked, right. Let me stop this now then, guys.